So moving into illnesses, so this is not the normal decline that we're talking about now. So this is kind of an abrupt turn in direction, but so just in general, dementia, it's progressive. Obviously the incidence increases with age, and it's rare before age 60. And dementia always involves impairment of memory. So it's always memory plus. So just kind of a general review. This is dementia. This is the broad area of cognitive decline that always involves memory, and then 104. And this is based on the DSM. And the most common dementia is Alzheimer's. And so impairment can be aphasia, which is a disturbance in language, either receptive or expressive. So either problems retrieving the information, the word, or a problem expressing, saying what the word is, getting it out. The person might know what they're talking about, like that chair, but they can't express it. Or they can't, they can know what it is, but they can't bring it up in their cognition. So apraxia, problems carrying out motor activities, problems walking. This occurs usually later in the degenerative process. Agnosia, that's disturbance in object recognition. So these people, and this is usually further along in the process of dementia, where, like for instance, they won't know what this table is, or recognizing what its function is, or also not knowing their own image, recognizing their own image in the mirror. And then another common area is impairment in executive functioning. So this would be problems planning, organizing, having abstract thoughts. So you'll see where people will start having problems just doing daily activities. So this is the frontal lobe. Okay, there are different types of aphasia. And so basically absence or impairment in ability to communicate through speech, writing, or signs. Agnosia can include loss of comprehension of auditory, visual, or other sensations, although the sensory sphere is intact. So it would, as far as, like, say, for instance, the optic nerve, they're able to hear, but they can't discern, interpret what or they're able to see, but they can't interpret what the image is. Same with these other sensory areas, like the tactile, inability to distinguish objects by sense of test. And there's a test called the fold, which is used to determine whether a person has tactile ability, and it involves maybe about 10 items they're placed in a black bag, and you ask the person being tested to put their hand in the bag, and they feel the object and they tell you what the object is. And I think there's maybe a key in there, a pencil. There are specific items. So that would be an example of how to test for that agnosia. Types of dementia, there's generally Alzheimer's and vascular dementia. I would say the first two are the most common, and then there's degenerative diseases that cause dementia, and then there's infections such as HIV, AIDS. Degenerative diseases include Parkinson's. It's a movement disorder. So it affects that part of the brain. the basal ganglion, and it's mostly neurons that are dopamine receptive neurons. And just basically speaking, it's related to dopamine deficiency. And Huntington's chorea is another form of dementia that's inherited. It's rare. There's a genetic marker for it. Or actually, it's genetically transmitted. And then there's Pick's disease and AIDS. Degenerative diseases include Parkinson's. It's a movement disorder. So it affects that part of the brain, the basal ganglion, and it's mostly neurons that are dopamine receptive neurons. And just basically speaking, it's related to dopamine deficiency. And Huntington's chorea is another form of dementia that's inherited. It's rare. There's a genetic marker for it. Or actually, it's genetically transmitted. And then there's Pick's disease and AIDS. And multi-infarct dementia is associated with hypertension. So that's if there's a vascular problem that's causing the impairment of blood supply to the brain, which causes death to cells and impairment in whatever areas that the blood supply doesn't get to in the brain. And the pattern that characterizes vascular dementia is a stair-step pattern, and it's because we see a more sudden decline in abilities that levels off, and then you see maybe another sudden decline and it levels off. So the changes are more dramatic or more profound than, say, with Alzheimer's, which is more gradual. So with a person who has had strokes, many strokes, it's going to be more noticeable, the changes, and then they might look fine for a long time until there's another incident. But still, they're not, these changes aren't profound. If you know anyone who has vascular dementia, it is still kind of a subtle change that you notice.